it's Ashley. Welcome back to another inspirational video for Simon Says Stamp. This time we're featuring the new Crafty Hugs release, and you'll have to excuse my stop motion video for being very poor, but we're going to be making a really cute interactive card using this brand new Crafty Bunnies stamp set. I'm obsessed with this stamp set. I can't wait to send all of the crafty cards to all of my crafty friends, and I would just love to jump into how I created this card. So of course it happens sometimes when we don't have the coordinating dies for our favorite stamp sets, but that's okay. We're still able to make dimensional scenes using a simple masking technique, which is what I'm going to do today. I'm starting with a piece of cardstock cut to 4 by 5 1/4, which is just slightly smaller than an A2 size card. I'm using my Mini Misty because I find when creating a scene, especially with lots of different masked images, it's easier to use a Misty or a stamp positioner than it is to use an acrylic block. As you can see, I have set up my table image stamp where I'd like it on my cardstock for my scene. But since I need to stamp anything that's going on top of that table first, I can just remove that table stamp out of the way after setting up a stamp that I need to go on top of the table, if that makes sense. So I'm using this adorable tiny little die cutting machine, and this is going to be at the forefront of my scene on top of my table. So I need to stamp this first. I'm using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. It's really crisp and I love this for Copic coloring. I can't recommend it enough. Now that I've stamped this really cute little die cutting machine, I'm just going to hit it really quickly with my heat tool. This will just ensure that the ink is completely dry before I put the masking paper over top. All of these images I have previously stamped and fussy cut out of masking paper. My masking paper is just removable sticker paper, but you could absolutely use full sticky back Post-it notes or even just another piece of cardstock or paper and place it over the image. However, having it actually sticking is very helpful in that it won't move around. So now that you can see, I'm also adding something else to the top of the table. I'm using this cup of pencils and I'm just putting it slightly over top of that masked die cutting machine. Now I'm going to do the same thing and just hit it with my heat tool really quickly, make sure that the ink is dry, and then I'll mask that as well. Now it's finally time to stamp my table. Had I not been using the masking technique, you would clearly be able to see lines going through all of the previously stamped images. But because we're using masking paper and then stamping over the masking paper, we'll get a lot of dimension. You can see I'm taking off the masking paper over top of the images that I've already stamped, that pencil cup and the little die cutting machine, and it clearly looks like it's on top of the table. The pencil cup looks a little bit set further back than the die cutting machine, and it just gives it a lot of dimension and believability in the scene. This is a great technique to use, like I said, if you don't have the coordinating dies for a certain stamp set, but it's also great if you're just looking to create a one-layer card, or if you want to make an image a little bit different. Instead of an empty table, if you want it to be filled with different craft products, then this is a great way to do that as well. So you can see I went ahead and stamped that little bunny right there. I've gone ahead and masked him, and now I'm going to arrange this chair so that it will look like he's sitting on top of it. Again, anything that you would normally put on top, like how the bunny is on top of the chair, needs to go first. So after I go ahead and remove the masking paper from the bunny, he is sitting nicely on top of that chair there. I'm doing something a little bit different for this bunny, and I'm going to add something to him. So he's got his tongue sticking out, which I think is really adorable, and I'm going to sort of tell a story by sticking a little envelope in between his arms. This is going to give a reason why his tongue might be sticking out. At first I thought to do glue, and then I was like, that's kind of weird. It looks like he's eating glue, so I quickly changed my mind and used the little envelope image that's included in the set. So I went ahead and set him up where I thought that I would like him. I'd like him sort of on the same plane as that first bunny, but maybe pushed back just a bit. And this will just give me a little bit more room to add that chair next to the table. So I've set him up and then I placed the envelope where I needed that to go. I went ahead and masked the envelope and then stamped the bunny over top the envelope. I'm going to go ahead and take that envelope masking off because once I mask the bunny with his masking paper, I covered the envelope that I've already previously stamped anyway. So I've gone ahead and masked over the bunny, and now I'm able to stamp my chair image. And then when I take the masking off of the bunny, finally, we have this full image of the bunny licking the envelope sitting on top of that chair. Now that I have that scene pretty much done, what I'm going to do is add another element. I'm using the little cart, the craft cart that's included in this set. It's so cute. I have one. I use it all the time, so I knew that I needed to utilize it in the scene somehow. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that image on a piece of cardstock. Now I'm going to take that masked image that I have already stamped and fussy cut, and I'll go ahead and place that over top of that stamped image. As I was fussy cutting this image, I realized that I needed to cut out in between each shelf on the cart, and this would make it possible for me to stamp the images and make them look like they were actually inside each shelf of the cart, but be able to see the images still sticking up through those shelves. So I'm starting with the very top shelf. Now this is also, I'm stamping on top of this masked image of this cart already. So I've stamped the stamps images, and now I'm going in with the die image to stamp right next to that. So now we have the first shelf of the cart filled with stamps and dies. I've now moved on to this image of a glue bottle, and I realized pretty quickly that it's a little bit long for these shelves. So what I do is that I wipe off the bottom half of the stamp, which I have already inked up. Now that I have it in my head that these images are slightly longer than what will fit inside these shelves on this cart, I just make sure that I'm only stamping the top half of whatever it is that I would like to be in these shelves. So you can see here that I'm using this paint tube to stamp in this center shelf, but you can see that I'm just really carefully kind of inking up the top maybe 3/4 of the stamp, and this is just to make sure that I don't have any hanging off of the bottom. This just really goes to show that you can use lots of different stamps in lots of different ways, and you can manipulate these stamps how you need them. Like I said, these are slightly longer than I need to fit inside these shelves, so I'm just inking up the top half and it works perfectly. You can see here the image of it all together. It looks like those products are just placed right inside that cart. And here I have my full colored image. This is the actual craft room that I have with the bunnies and the table, and then all the things on the table, which is so cute. And then I've got, of course, my rolling cart that is filled with lots of different products. The background that I used for the wall, or maybe the wallpaper, is from the Geo Leaves stencil, and this is also from the newest Crafty Hugs release. It can be used in lots of different ways, and I decided just to use a little bit of it here as wallpaper or a painting on the wall. My idea for this scene is that this craft cart can roll in between the bunnies, so they can sort of push it to one another and they'll get all the products they need. To do that, I'm going to use a slider die. This one in particular is from Fawn, but lots of companies offer really similar slider dies, and I just particularly like this set because it comes with lots of different options as well. So I'm going to first figure out where I need the slider die, where I'd like to place my cart, and once I do that, I'm going to adhere it to my card front with some washi tape, and this is just to make sure that it won't move around in the die cutting machine. Now I'm using some fun foam, which is adhesive on both sides, and I'm matching up that area with the same die to make sure that I can get the same exact cut in the same exact place on the fun foam as I have on my card front. Once I have done that, I'm going to go ahead and remove the adhesive holder from the top of the fun foam and then adhere my card front to it. This worked out wonderfully, and you can see that my card front is now adhered to this piece of fun foam, and these slider die inserts match up perfectly. You could absolutely run it through the die cutting machine all together, like the fun foam already adhered to the card front, but I was worried about cracking and creasing on my card front and the cardstock, so I just wanted to make sure that I did it separately. If there was cracking or creasing on the fun foam, it wouldn't affect the aesthetic of the card or the card front, so I just really wanted to make sure that I kept that separate. But if you're very confident in your die cutting machine and your die cutting abilities, you could absolutely do that all together and have no problems. Now that I want to go ahead and insert my moving feature, which is our cart, into the die cut, the slider die cut, I need to make sure that I add a lot of dimension. So I cut my foam tape and make sure first that it fits through the die cut itself, because if it's too thick or if it's too thin, it either won't move around or move around too much. So I just want to make sure that it fits nicely. I also go ahead and double up this foam tape. This is important because it needs to be thicker and more dimensional than the card front itself, because it needs to go from the front of the card, obviously, to the back of the card front like you're seeing now. So adding this double layer ensures that it's a little bit thicker than the card front itself, and then it ensures that I'm able to add this piece of cardstock like you just saw to the back side, and this will keep it on track and make sure that it doesn't fall out of that die cut area. Speaking of track, I go ahead and cut this cardstock down so that I can make a track on the back side of my card. So I want to make sure that this cardstock still stays fairly big, but I also want to make sure that I create this track so that this cardstock and the movable piece can't just move around. It will stay in this sort of left to right position and it won't get caught on anything along the way. So I go ahead and add some foam tape on the back of that, and this again will add more dimension to make sure that our movable piece can move around. And now we have a completed card. Finally, I added my card front to an A2 size card base and called it done. Obviously, this took a little bit more time to create, but it's so fun, and it's a fun surprise for any crafty friend that you send it to as well. I think everybody is really familiar with these little craft carts, and they'll love the fact that the bunnies can share all of the products inside. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I'd love to hear any questions or comments that you have, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Bye.